So our first instruction, mind in Danchen. So the way we understand that now is just a feeling that the Danchen is drawing into itself towards the back, towards the Min Meng. So this feeling that the two sides are rolling round, something is coming from underneath and in. Feel the spine as like, almost like a closed loop. So your back is the back of a curve. So there's a sense of something coming underneath and completing it, and also a sense of coming over the top. There's a feeling that your long tail is coming up and is going into the Danchen. And here, like something is coming over your head and coming into this point here. Feeling the legs as being very much two things that come out of the sides of that and just grab the ground. So in Tai Chi, we're using the body, cultivating natural movement in an attempt to retrain the mind. Mind just assumes that it is the central authority, and it also assumes a stillness so that it can actually do its working. This is what, meditation can be dangerous in that sense, in that you're still. And that's what the mind likes in a way. So the mind likes the body to be still. It can do its moving. So this is why in meditation, they always emphasize, concentrate on the breath. That's the part of you that's moving, even when you're sitting down still. And so when we're standing, what we just have to be really careful that we don't use the legs to lock a stillness. So it's always moving. So let's just start by breathing. So this is basically what's happening when we're meditating. I mean, it's imperceptible to an observer, but you're moving. Something is coming in and out, and the spine is flexing. So it's like at school, we're told, sit still and listen, sit still and concentrate. So we get accustomed to producing like a sort of a fierce, anxious stillness so that this can do its thing. So what we'd like to do is just get the body just moving in a very natural, soft way to encourage the mind to just become still and quiet. So it's this still, quiet mind inside a moving body, rather than an active, anxious mind inside a locked, still body. And just get into the reverse breathing. So just gently, So breathe in as you bring the hands in. So I'm breathing in here, and then I'm breathing out here. Breathing in at the same time that I'm contracting the belly. And so the internal pressure is really increasing. And that has a sense that it's sort of expanding me. And then this is like a release of that pressure. This is how a fighter naturally breathes. They use the in-breath, the yielding phase, to store the energy, build up the pressure. And then the attacking phase is just that relaxing. So it explodes outwards. Feel the air coming in the nostrils or the mouth and being sucked down to the belly, to the dantian, and then it being allowed out. bring it to riding horse. So it's very difficult what we're trying to do, because it's a reversal of everything that we've learned. We're normally coming out into the world, whereas in Tai Chi, we're bringing the world in, including ourselves. This sense that everything is furling in, especially to the Danshan, but also to the other two centers, the heart and the head. So you're withdrawing, going inside. And then what happens is, then your energy comes out. If you're not quiet and still inside, then you've got no energy. You'll be using force instead of energy. I always say the best training really would be to be doing it on a boat, where the boat is listing. You'd have to have a low center of gravity, and your body would just be full of the movement of the sea, full of the energy of the sea. We can just imagine that. There's a sense that the ground beneath your feet is like water. It's got this sort of boiling quality. There's something happening in it, infusing your body. Nothing is still. Everything is moving. So the main idea in Tai Chi, the main concept really is yielding, or, because no one knows what that word means here, I just call it listening. Really listening, and not prepared and willing to be transformed by what you hear. So it's not listening in order to then add your tuppence worth. So it's not the world of opinions, it's the world of energy. And so there's something in me that's just really listening to the movement, just feeling the movement. And that's just so important if we want to yield, because when you yield to the other person, you have to be ready to respond to their energy, not just give them a response that you planned beforehand. So if they start pushing you, you've just got to melt away. Let's just start turning, but with this real feeling that I'm not imposing an exercise upon myself. Something in me is just going with something that's happening. And then it has to return. So if I turn, then I have to return if I'm going to keep my feet stuck on the floor. Otherwise, I can't turn beyond a certain point. So I turn here, and then you just feel the return, feel it coming back, and then this side turns. You're turning because you're listening and hearing something. Like something else is turning you. It's not this central authority that's telling the body what to do. You're listening. listening to every centimeter of movement. The body is not building momentum. The body is listening. So you're listening and allowing yourself to be moved by what it is you're hearing. So physically moved, but also emotionally moved. So my mind is acutely on the job. For my mind to start thinking to itself, my body has to become tense. When the mind is listening, there's a sense that your body is just always relaxing into itself, always relaxing into the energy, always releasing. back to riding horse. It's like the navel, really. I mean, John always used to say, you know, the danchen is just like a couple of inches below the navel inside. When you draw the navel in, it sucks in and down into the danchen. The mind is in the navel, then you'll get this sort of circuit going, which is the one that we want. It's not just in and out, it's always circular. There's always a circularity. So there's this action. So when you make that circle bigger, there's a sense that it's slipping underneath your feet and then coming up. Sacrum is just dropping down, but because it's heavy, it cuts under. So the mind is light and playful. Play is the operative word. Okay. The arch of the legs, really in the outside edges. Your danchen is just sitting on the top of that arch. even though your legs are sort of in front of you, the feeling is that they've sprung out of the sacrum. It's very similar to how the arms have sort of come out of the back, the spine opposite the heart. So this sense that the arm has come out and then come around something. Let's just try this. So just going out and just really extend from the shoulder and then down, so out. The same feeling here. So the feeling is that the legs have sprung out of the sacrum in the same way. And the way we work on that is by pulling to get into the foot. I want to move in that direction, not because this leg has pushed me, but because this leg has pushed the ground in this direction. So it's not that I'm pulling like this. I'm not pulling myself like that. I'm scooping. I'm using my leg and like a spoon that's. I have to round out. So my knee has to go out to get that outside edge active. And then it's the foot cutting under the ground like this that actually pulls me into it. And that really gets this feeling of something coming out of the sacrum and then down, which is what we want. If you're yielding to the person, you're sort of doing this. Like in rollback, yes, a rollback would be here. Offer your hand for the person to push, and then they would push. But really, when we start rollback, it's like this. So this hand is the one that's really doing the yielding, because that's getting behind the person and drawing them through. The last thing they will expect resistance, and you're adding your energy to their push, so they're really going to sort of just lose their balance. So it's the same thing here. I'm getting behind that bit of ground and pushing it in this direction in order to draw me towards it. Just feeling the mind that is willing to just, it's like opening a mouth in order to take a really large morsel into your mouth. So something in you has to really expand and open so that you can get behind the thing that you're trying to. Like the early films of Steven Seagal. When he's a lot taller than most of the people he was dealing with, but you get a real sense that his mind is behind the person that he's dealing with. And then it's almost like a foregone conclusion, because he's listening to them. He's with them. He's swallowed the other person. So you're extending in order to reach, but you're also opening up at the same time, because you have to reach behind the thing. the shoulder really sort of rises. The sense that my shoulder has to come up in order to then relax down the arm. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the extension with the bending arm, because I'm not extending like this. I'm extending and curving at the same time in order to get behind. And so that's happening in the arm, but it's also happening in the hip. So this sense that my hip is coming up, and then something just flows out of that and down into the foot. So you have to really delay the movement of the body. This is really opening here. This is really opening here. So whenever we do something that's tricky, just be careful with the head. Just be careful that you're not concentrating so much that you're forwards. That's always the temptation, because we're so used to that. It's like the kid at school sort of hunched over their notes, scribbling away frantically. So it's just full and empty, really. So I have to feel this leg is my full leg, and it's trying just to support me. It's trying just to sort of just keep me there. And this leg is my that's trying to move me. So there's a little bit of a fight that's going on until the movement starts. Feel how the emptiness, it's not a nothingness really, it's just, it's a real activity. There's something just naturally expands, and then as that returns, as that, which it must do, because the energy won't go on forever, I can use that to get behind. This is emptying, and I'm using that to embrace. So it's just hugging. You were just hugging. We hug everything. Yeah, so you can practice this as you walk down the street. I love doing that sort of exercise, just walking along and registering the things that I pass, that I encounter and pass with my heart rather than my head. So we're so used to just seeing something, recognizing it, and then dismissing it. So the mind is just really unpleasant and hard. So if you can look at something and just open up to it and just see, what's it doing here? What's my emotional response to that thing? You can have an emotional response to anything. It doesn't have to be a person or something that you like. Trees are great. How does that tree feel different from that tree? It's not how it looks. It's just, what does it do to this when I open up to it? And I just face it and let it move me. Bring it back. So mind in the Danshen and a vertical sacrum. Especially when we walk, the sacrum just angles back. When you get the sacrum vertical, it feels like you're leaning backwards, and you probably are. But it also feels like the sacrum is being pushed down and forwards. So it's getting underneath your upper body. That's where we want it. And then the lightness can just rise up through the body. Then you've got the vault of the sky, and it's just drawing all of this up. You almost get the feeling that part of you is hovering at the same time. This sandy ground is just sucking you down into it. Your materiality is melting and sinking into this porous ground, and your spiritual soul aspect is being sucked upwards by the anti-gravity of the heavens, the vacuum of the heavens. They're just like a plant, really. So you've got your roots going into the ground, so that geotropism, and then you've got the heliotropism, or the phototropism, of your upper body searching. It's not really searching for the sun in our case. It's searching for the stars. It's much stronger at nighttime. It's like a celestial draw. Sacrum is vertical, and the Danchen is just drawing in. Our development of the Danchen, this sense that it's not just a big place, it's not just the fat, bloated, smug belly of the meditator. It's the tight, taut, responsive belly of the fighter, of the warrior. It's that draw here that actually produces that quality they call sticking. So that sense that you can put your hand on something and you're sucking it, you're sticking to it, you're pulling it onto yourself. So the same with the feet. The feet are on the ground, but there's a real feeling that the draw here is sucking something out of the ground and up into me. And the same when you put your hand on something. So that's sticking. Just the opposite of the way we are nowadays, where we're just coming out all the time to find new distractions, new pleasures. So just you're inside ready to fight. You can't afford to get distracted, because otherwise you won't see the fight when it's coming. So it's the warrior path. Doesn't mean we have to be good at fighting, it just means we have to be good at listening. Yeah, and eventually it's not even a pull, it's just a stillness. Pulling yourself together, really. Just try just this circly one. So yield and attack. Endeavoring to smooth the place where one turns into the other. So this is really Taoism. Taoism is just looking at those places where the yin turns to yang and yang turns. But then this sense that the hand is now behind the person and I'm pushing the person towards me. I can then turn the other way. And the same thing here, I'm turning here and I just keep turning until my hand turns over and then I turn back. So here, just going this way, and then here. So it's the same principle that we were working on with the ground, with the pulling of the leg. It's the same thing here. I scoot behind the person. So I join their energy from behind. And then I can just slip back the other way. Yeah, so you just got to get the technique set up. Make sure you know what you're doing, and make sure that it's sort of working. And then you just forget the technique and just go with the energy. So what that will mean is that this will come down and underneath, and this will just come back. It's now just happening. You're now right in the middle, in the thick of it. As John used to say, the only way you'll get into this stuff and practice it is if you really enjoy it. just bring it to riding horse again. Just making sure this is in the right place, because it does tend to get sort of stuck back. So full and empty. So I'm coming into this leg. The leg is tightening up in order to become strong, to hold me up. And this is just letting go. And then going into this leg. And now this leg can let go. And so this is difficult because we're not used to relaxing the legs. The legs always have this sort of residual tension in them. So here I just really want to let this flush out. So I have to be quite sure that this leg is going to be able to support me so that this let go. And then the same thing here. So I don't want to get over the leg like this. This stays level. So full and empty is very important if you want to be able to let your energy out. So letting your energy out sounds a simple thing, but people don't. People use force. So I sink into this leg and this leg just lets go. So that's the energy. The energy is flowing down and out of the empty leg. And then when I come into the empty leg and it becomes full, then the other one can just empty. So the energy flows down the leg and then it catches the ground because it always returns. There's always a circularity. That's the principle, really. The principle is just the circle or the figure of 8. Something relaxes and it comes back, and it's that that starts me moving into it. So just feel the two minds, the full mind and the empty mind. So we're just trying to separate them. changing the legs. Bring it back. Everything is like a container and is also contained by like a bigger container. The Danchen in itself is containing this collapsing drawing like a black hole, and that is tending to draw this backwards. But then the Danchen itself is contained within the sacrum, and that is actually drifting in the other direction. So there's always this play. When we used to learn the short form, what I noticed was John, he'd always make a point of telling us to just hold it. I'll come round and adjust the postures, remember? So he'd come round and you were just hoping you weren't going to be the last person, because if you were, your legs would be dead. What he would often do is just put his hand on the sacrum and just ease it forwards a little bit. I'd always try and think, oh yeah, he wants this to be forwards, and so I would move forwards. I'd feel his hand and anticipate what he was going to do, and I would sink into this adjusted, corrected posture. Now, it's only really when I started teaching myself and I started doing that as well, that I realized that what the teacher wants is not for you to move away from his hand, but for you to relax into his hand, so that he can then move you into the better position. Because if you get there yourself, it's wrong. you need to have got there. It's a process that takes you there. It's the process of sinking or relaxing. So there's a sense that this is coming in and pushing my sacrum backwards. But then there's another larger system, larger picture in which my sacrum is just sinking down. So that's really me relating to the earth and the heavens. This is just me using the Danchen to draw energy into it. So there's always these levels. It's that beautiful quote of Emerson's that just completely blew my mind. Because it's interesting because Emerson, you know, he's born 1803, so it's quite early. But it's completely Taoist, his writing and his thinking. So much so that someone has rewritten the Tao Te Ching using quotations from Emerson. So basically just saying exactly what the Tao Te Ching says, but in Emersonian language. Just lifting the leg. So just taking the foot off the ground. I'm going down the outside edge of the foot, cutting under, pushing it up from underneath. So this is all the time in Tai Chi. This is a general principle. So I'm getting underneath and then I can just hoik this up. The feeling is that you've got under the foot. Now, of course, it's not going to come up with that. So you also need to pull it up. And so for that, just use the belly. So my belly is contracting. Under and 1, 2, and 3. So on the third one, this is really tight. And 1, 2, 3. For the outside edge. lifting the knee. There's a sense of something rising. So you're getting down to earth so that things can look up. Real sense that your sacrum is underneath the rest of you. That's where you want to get the heel. You know, that lovely picture of Iyengar standing on one leg with the other foot behind his head. Just a little bit of the figure of 8. Now, when we do the figure of 8, I'm yielding here like this, and then this hand comes up, and then instead of coming back here, it goes into this point on the other leg. Just one continuous ribbon. One hand is just taking over from the other. So it's continuous, it's a continuous thread. So that's what's happening here. Something in my mind has to create this space for the energy to move around within. If my mind is thinking about something else, there'll be no energy. There's no space. There's no container. Then the energy will just manifest. You don't have to worry about it. The transcendental field. So the mind of the meditator. How do we create that space? We meditate and we pray. Think of a tree just standing there, just praising God all day. That's our curse. We allow ourselves choice. You are truly blessed to know you have no choice. Okay, now let's just try just the first couple of postures of the form just to see how that. Basically just trying to keep and now I start the figure of 8 again. So coming in this point here, this loops out. There's just one continuous ribbon. And now the next posture. So this hand is now trying to come in here. And then this hand is wanting to get into this point here, which allows the ward off to come up. This heel is trying to get into here. This hand is getting into here. And you can feel as you get into here, it just pushes you into the outside edge and takes this hand out. All outside edges. So now let's just finish. Just imagine a very thin thread. That's holding you up. Imagine it's raining. And the legs have a spring in them. And again, this sense that the bending of the legs takes me down, but it also takes the sacrum forwards. I want to just slip We know the form well enough now not to have to worry about whether we're getting it right or wrong. We can play with it.